Well, hello there, everyone. Homura Hime is an interesting case for a game because I remember originally seeing a teaser for it years ago, but with a release date of to be determined, I figured it'd be a long while before we could play it. But every year or so, I'd go through my Steam wishlist and I'd see it's still there and think, oh yeah, I wonder how that's going, and then see it still had the to be determined release date, and I figured it was just never coming out, like Silk Song. But then Silk Song came out. Now, I wasn't exactly following development closely, I just figured, hey, it looks cool, might be fun to play eventually. So I was surprised when the game was essentially shadow dropped on me. You could tell the developer was a massive fan of Nier Automata and Sekiro, with them even getting to meet Yoko Taro, and I'm not going to beat around the bush here, this game is excellent, and you owe it to yourself to at least try the demo, at least in terms of gameplay. I think the game is amazing, and at least in terms of gameplay, I think it actually surpasses its inspiration Nier Automata, and possibly even Sekiro, though I'm not as confident in that statement. And that's shown nowhere better than the boss fights, which we're going to be ranking from worst to best. Just a heads up, you battle a lot of bosses in this game 2 or 3 times because they're against specific characters, but each fight is unique enough that I'll be giving them their own entries. With that being said, let's dive on into what I consider to be, at least so far, the best indie game to come out in 2026. Number 19, Hexstall. I was debating if I should even count this fight since there isn't a boss health bar here, but it's against a unique foe that only appears here, and it is a significant point in the story. Though ultimately the Hexstalls are just a plot fight for you to battle for a few minutes before Hime unlocks her ultimate attack to truly win. I will say though, it's not a bad story beat. The fight is fun enough for what it is, and the arena does really come with some
good atmosphere.
Number 18, Hualing. Not counting the weird plot fight against the Hexstalls, Hualing is far and away the worst boss in the game. And she's still okay. She's fine, there's just far less to her than some of the other bosses on this list for one specific reason. She's immune to melee attacks. It's all about using your spirit shot to damage her while she goes crazy with projectile spam. In a vacuum, it's nothing more than a random bullet hell boss, but I can appreciate it when looking at the level as a whole, because she's effectively the desperation move of Chapter 2's main boss fight. Plus, this isn't considered a super high stakes battle, everything ends in a fairly relaxed note, and overall, it's a simple, straightforward fight that just kinda does a decent job training you for a much harder fight to come at the end of the chapter. Number 17, Akane, Hinata, and Aoi. So this one falls into the territory of kind of a boss fight, kind of not. Throughout the Shrine of the Moon order, these 3 Hexstalls with far more distinct personalities will force you into playing their minigames, which are honestly pretty neat little distractions with how they recontextualize the game's controls and mechanics. They can be fun. Either way, before you can enter the gate to go face the Holy Maiden, the 3 of them will stop you, sending you on minigame expeditions, and then just decide, we're just gonna fight you. The battle is very straightforward. Aoi puts up a shield over her sister, so she must be taken out first. Hinata fires 5 lasers, 2 of which are unblockable, as well as having a charge attack that she can do against you, and Akane alternates between raining down bullets and smashing you over the head with a comedically large hammer. It's a simple fight, but as a mini-boss, it does a job pretty well, and it has unique music which helps it stand out from regular enemy battles. I don't really love the fight, but I don't hate it, and I'm actually happy to say that from this point on, everything after this is at the very least good. Number 16, Holy Maiden Chirakuin. And finally a more proper boss fight. Chirakuin, the Holy Maiden, acts as the main boss of Chapter 3, and in my opinion she's the weakest chapter boss by a significant amount, but her fight is still far from bad. Her music is nice and ominous while also sounding fairly divine. She has some fun attacks, and visually this boss fight and arena are quite nice. But at the same time, she's probably the boss with the most dead time, as she's not one for keeping mobile, as her walk cycle is so slow she may as well not even walk. Meaning, the only way she really repositions is teleporting, which is alright, but there's times where her AI will just stand there for a good 3 to 5 seconds and leave you wondering if you broke something. I do like the fight, though she has some fun flying combos. Her rift slashes are a nice good little reaction test, and her grab requires you to dodge in the right direction, and I actually think that's really cool as an addition because she can change what direction you need to dodge into based off of where her weapon is not covering. What I'm not as big a fan of is her desperation phase. Most major bosses have some sort of pinch mode they enter as a last resort, and in Chirakuin's case, there's not really anything new here, it's just more bullet attacks and some melee combos, which is fine. But see, every boss in their pinch phase has some form of barrier you need to take down that demands something different of the player. And what I'm not a fan of is her red barrier. Now, to be fair, maybe I should have pieced together that red means physical attacks, but also to be fair, prior to this, we've had purple and blue pinch modes, and purple required you to parry a string of attacks and strike a fatal blow, while blue required you to use your spirit shots, likely for bullet hell segments, with both of these not only being seen on bosses but on quite a few elite enemies prior, so you knew what to do when they showed up in the boss fights. Meanwhile, the red shield is only used by a single enemy prior to this fight, and the enemy's so fragile that you won't likely piece together the gimmick is that you have to melee it to take down the shield because you can kill it so quickly. As for the story, it's the middle of the archdemons you hunt without the early impact of Agasa or Ling Ling, while also lacking the major story beats of the 4th and 5th archdemon. The story's pretty much just boiling down to, "You fool, you don't know anything," which essentially just hints at a plot twist that became extremely obvious in the last chapter after we were very clearly in the wrong. Number 15, Unknown, Round 2. So, spoilers going forward, but after you've essentially beaten the game and begun not quite New Game Plus, it takes no time at all for everything to start getting thrown out of whack, as time itself has been screwed with, all the archdemons have come back to life, and it's also been revealed they're not even really demons, they're just girls with curses, while everything is a Ponzi scheme orchestrated by Dio Brando. That last part's only kind of a joke, you'll see what I mean later. Your battle against Unknown is interesting, and well, here's the thing, you do battle her before this, at the end of your first run through the game, but then to show just how out of whack things have gotten, Agasa's nowhere to be seen, and now the first boss of your second run is a rematch with Unknown, and as the case with most bosses you battle 3 times in a video game, the second battle ends up being the awkward middle child. There's no real escalation or interesting new twist thrown in to the fight, it's just a single phase version of her first battle, which is still a lot of fun, and would probably be worthy of great tier if not for one issue. This boss fight is the only point in the game that I found the game would consistently just run badly. Normally I had it going at a buttery smooth 60 FPS without issue, which is what I lock it to for recording purposes, because trying to do uncapped frame rates in recording is... don't do that, guys, it's not going to work. But this one boss fight in particular, I'd have points where the FPS could drop, and even worse parts where the game would just straight up pause for a second like it was buffering. I don't know if something was off with my settings or there was something else going on with the arena and the effects or whatever, but it definitely does hurt the fight and it drags it down here to near the bottom of the list. Number 14, Giant Skeleton. Chapter 1 caps off with the largest boss in the game against the Giant Skeleton. This fight is kind of the obligatory big boss that's early on in most action games, a punching bag with a few flashy attacks, and you know what, it's pretty cool. We already had a more technical fight against Agasa, so a more cinematic fight is alright. Plus, the boss does at least have a few decent attacks once she drops below 60% HP to keep you on your toes. But it's also the only time in the game we get a special attack or a special quick time event designed to give us easy counters. However, while the overall simplicity is fine, I do have a major complaint with this fight, and that is the aggressive ass checkpointing. Now, a checkpoint between her and the fight with Agasa is fine, but then the Giant Skeleton also has checkpoints within the boss fight, where if you get the health bar low enough, you don't start over from the beginning, you start from those HP thresholds, like say 25% HP for example. They don't want you to lose this boss fight. They really don't want you to lose this boss fight, which is all fine and good, but I'm playing on Shrine Maiden difficulty, which is the highest available difficulty at the start of the game, and this game has revival items that you can also use in the middle of battle to revive to full HP, while the boss does not heal at all. It's okay to have a little bit more faith in the player, I think, personally, or at least make it a toggle. I mean, heck, make optional checkpoints a toggle or something. Games have done that before. Otherwise, the fight works well as a cinematic cap-off to the game's first chapter, and maybe a hot take, but I'd actually say Hime killing Agasa during your first playthrough is 100% justified. She attacked us first. After the battle was over, Hime tried to de-escalate the situation, only for Agasa to pull out a fucking Gashadokuro looking motherfucker. After a certain point, sad backstories are irrelevant, and it's time to get down to business. Number 13, Agitator. I know Steel Ball Run kinda sorta acts as a soft reboot of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but I gotta say, Dio's definitely looking a little bit funky here.
せてくれる。
Anyways, the Educator is effectively the opening act for the game's true final boss, though this battle is less about the melee and more about the bullet hell aspect, which is fine, but I take issue with this boss fight in that it breaks the game's own rules. Throughout the game, we've learned red meant parryable attacks, gold means cannot be parried and must be dodged. Blue is a bit of a wild card exclusive to unknown throughout most of the game, however, this time around, it's parryable, but they do have red flashes inside it, so that's all fine. All of his melee attacks work normally, and are completely fine and fair in my opinion, even if they're not the most exciting animations. But the issue is, the gold attacks, he has so many of them that come out so quickly that dodging them is nearly impossible to dodge. Except, many of them, like the giant laser beam, which looks like a dodge this or die attack, can 100% be parried, and it's just so weird. Once you learn what is and isn't fair game, the fight is still good. It's just doing battle against a dude voiced by the legendary Takehito Koyasu, and the music is really intense, fitting of what is presumably the final battle of the game. Unfortunately, while the music may be awesome and really evokes that early 2000s bullet hell game soundtrack, having to essentially learn how to walk again can be very annoying, and that's not taking into account the fact that the bosses in this game are at their best when you're clashing against foes that are in your weight class in some kick-ass melee duel with bullet hell thrown in. Meanwhile, a almost pure bullet hell fight against Celestial's Japanese cousin ain't gonna really hit the same way. Number 12, Nozomi Chirakuin. Your second trip around the world sees you rematching the 5 archdemons, though at this point we know they're not really archdemons, but girls that were forcibly turned into yokai due to some unfortunate circumstance or another. And given that Nozomi is one of only 3 people that actually remembers the previous time loop, she's less than happy to see us. Which helps this fight a lot because she's now starting the battle in Phase 2, and there's far less dead time in the fight than her original battle in Chapter 3 had. She's trying to perform the Blood Moon ritual in order to stop the main villains, but it's some sort of a I'm gonna nuke the fucking planet to stop the bad guy strategy, which isn't really the best of ideas. The fight's a major step up from her original fight, but at the same time, she's far and away the worst of the rematches because she's not really bringing anything too terribly new to the table, she's just no longer sandbagging. I didn't notice any new attacks or combo chains, just increased urgency in her old attacks. We do at least get some more story this time around, as we learn more about Nozomi's past, which is cool, and overall I do think the fight is an improvement, but it's not a significant improvement like some of the other fights are, and it's the only one of the archdemons that I'd say isn't really worthy of the great tier. Number 11, Ling Ling and Hua Ling. Ling Ling is the first archdemon you'll rematch as you do your second run through the game, because Agasa is nowhere to be found. The Flowering Corpse Princess is far and away the friendliest of our foes, to the point that the first battle against her could have been avoided entirely if our heroes weren't being comedically stupid during Chapter 2. But we'll get to that when we get to that. What I appreciate most about the boss rematches is how they feel significantly different from their initial battles, really selling the fake New Game Plus vibe that's kind of going on in the game. Though this time around, considering we killed her and were 100% in the wrong last time, she may have forgotten, but she's not so quick to forgive. The problem is her one new addition in Phase 1 that single-handedly drags this fight down, and that is Hua Ling joining in to fire an electric projectile. It can't be parried, it's often thrown in mid-combo of attacks that need to be parried, and it does a lot of damage, and it forms a pretty large AoE when it hits, meaning you need to dodge her other attacks mid-combo with good timing while that electric projectile is going on, and that's much easier said than done. It's not impossible by any means, but it really does throw off the great rhythm her first fight had. Thankfully, we have a whole unique second phase where I initially thought she fused with her coffin, but really she's just hanging onto it for dear life, which is pretty funny. I'm not going to pretend like her new attacks don't take some getting used to, but the slightly off rhythm works well, surprisingly enough, and the boss encourages you to utilize your skills and combos with improved aerial mobility, which I'm always down for, since a lot of the game up to this point could have been fought more grounded. And the fight ends on a nice story note with Hime restoring her memories, which also leads to her hearing us out, and a solid heart-to-heart where she decides to give us a second chance, which in this case, honestly, is more than we deserve. And she becomes our friend while also being the first friendly face to move to the hub world with us. Make no mistake, I think this fight is really fun, but it's the only rematch that in the game I'd consider a notable downgrade from her original fight, even if it is still a great tier battle. Number 10, Unknown. The first loop of the game ends with a proper boss fight against you. Assuming that throughout your journey, Hime tried to fulfill her duty as a proper hero and help people along the way, she'll reject the High Priestess's offer, and we're now deemed as defective, so we have to fight our own twin? Clone? Actually, weren't we the clone in this case? Now, I've heard you can accept the High Priestess offer, but to be perfectly honest, I don't know how much of a jackass you'd have to be to qualify for that, and I've never seen any video evidence of that ending, so take that with a grain of salt. Who the hell knows? Anyways, the first battle with Unknown is essentially a fight against an opponent in your weight class, but one that far outclasses you, and it's clear she's just toying with you and you stand no real chance of winning. You're just trying to fight to survive as best you can. That is, of course, until she either kills you or you get her down to half health where she kills you anyways, and that's when you unlock Hime's Devil Trigger mode, known in this game as Fireheart, which is in permanent effect for the second phase of this fight. Her moveset is more complex, but she just doesn't have enough damage output to keep up with you in Fireheart mode at this point in the game, so you're able to come away with a victory, but instead of rolling credits, you get knocked out of commission and are basically forced to go explore the regions of the world again, as you're currently stuck in a time loop fighting and killing these supposed archdemons over and over again. But this time around, you're able to see your memories and, well, see that the world's kind of breaking apart, so there's a little hope you can change things. And that sets you off to begin your second journey of the game. Overall, I think it does a pretty good job setting up the end of the first half and leading into the game's second act. Number 9, Agasa the Skeleton Girl. Agasa is the first boss of the game, and honestly, in terms of raw mechanics, I think she nails the job of being a tutorial boss. None of her attacks are super hard to read, but she's implementing all the different mechanics very well. Her hands may be big and exaggerated, but it also makes the animations more distinct, and yes, her attacks are easy to parry, but that also is kind of to be expected for an early game fight. And she also has some bullets that she'll throw in, which means you need to dodge out of the way, and it's very clear with its rules. Red means parry, bullets should probably be avoided, gold means get the fuck out of the way. And she's also the first opponent where a stagger gauge is likely to come into full display here, because while you could stagger enemies prior to this, most of them had so little health in the first chapter that they'd probably die beforehand. Then at half health, she enters her Demon Barrage state, where she does a great job getting the players used to the more bullet hell side of boss fights. From there, she enters her second phase, which carries over all of her same moves, but now with alternate finishers like Bullet Rain or her Hand Slam, as well as incorporating her Grav Attack, which, get this, has a clear and distinct animation, sound cue, and telegraphs, making it feel completely fair and natural to avoid. So you're telling me we have distinct animations, combo mix-ups, enough mobility for repositioning, attacks that encourage a mix of deflecting and dodging instead of just going all in on one or the other, and a grab attack that's clear and distinct? This is the tutorial boss, and it's already outshining a majority of the Lies of P base game boss fights. Anyways, shade aside, it's an excellent starting boss that shows the more mechanical side of boss battles, while the giant skeleton afterwards shows the more theatrical side of it. Number 8, the twin watchdogs Yumiko and Kumiko. And now the game is forced to show its stuff in a proper multi-boss fight, which can always be a challenge in any action game, and especially Souls-likes. Personally, I don't think this game really fits the Souls-like title at all, but hey, it's got the tag on the Steam page, so here we are. Anyways, how does it do? Really well, honestly. The game keeps your camera hard focused on Yumiko while Kumiko takes a more passive role, as she'll never attack you from off screen, and she hangs back acting as the follow-up to most of Yumiko's attacks. The music in this fight is nice, and the challenge level can be tricky because there's no checkpoints to be found in this fight, but at the same time there's no big crazy moves or phase changes. It's one of the most fast-paced fights in the game, but it works really well and is some good fun, while also doing a pretty good job to prepare you for a much harder fight against your 5th and final Archdemon a little bit later in the game, because their aggression level is something of a middle ground between that fight and the honestly kind of passive Chirakuin. Plus, I have to give it credit for the ominous and brutal ending to the boss fight, and it's a good thing Hime herself isn't a villain like her sadistic sister, because she lacks the playful nature and goes for brutal efficiency, and we also get some foreshadowing to our battle against the unknown later on in the game. Number 7, Dark Homura Hime. Okay, if I have one complaint with the fight, it's that for some odd reason our dark counterpart never gets a proper name. She's always just known as Dark Homura Hime, and even the game isn't 100% sure that's an accurate name. Either way, our third and final battle is far and away the best fight, taking place high up in the sky of the Kimono airship. It's not a very long fight, but it works extremely well, with the fight being basically all go from the start to the end. She's using her moveset from the Scarlet Flame portion of her first battle, with a bit more ferocity thrown in, except now we don't have some crazy plot armor power-up to help us. But at the same time, you're more than capable of pulling off a victory here after 1.5 playthroughs of experience and upgrades to the point where it's entirely possible this final battle with her can feel downright easy if you know what you're doing. Gameplay-wise, the fight nails the battle, but I think story-wise it's a little weird because it's not presented as your final battle against her because it's not really intended to be. However, when she attacks Mihare's Shrine at the end of the game, it's Ling Ling, the twins, and the other residents of Mihare's Shrine that ultimately end up fighting her because you don't really have time to waste on her bullshit. And it's kind of interesting how, in this case, the defect is the straightforward and serious one, and the bratty sadistic one is supposedly the proper iteration of Homura Hime. Number 6, Mamiya the Fallen Samurai. Mamiya is built up to be the game's final boss during your first playthrough of the game, and even though you've likely pieced together she isn't the intended end of the game, she's still putting up a significant fight. She doesn't have any goofy gimmicks or bullshit thrown in, it's just a powerful swordswoman on top of a frozen lake in a battle to the death, and it works fantastically. She has a decent amount of combo variety, with some good amounts of both ranged and also up-close attacks, and her umbrella can still keep her in midair for a second or two if she ever needs to stall, which is interesting. But when her health falls, she does away with her umbrella and pulls out her Naginata, and now she's going apeshit with her combos, ice shards, clones, lasers, and just all-out attacking. The fight is intense, but damn if it isn't fun, and while she may not be the final boss, she has the sense of finality backed up by her excellent music, which in itself has multiple movements it goes through depending on the phase you're in, and it's pretty cool. And I love how the fight ends and how much of a victory this fight ultimately isn't, as Mamiya straight up holds back during the final blow because she sees this as her final act of penance, but also forcing Hime to kill another person that she wanted to keep alive, probably doing more harm than good. I know it sounds like I'm jumping all over the place, but that's just kind of how these Nier Automata-esque games are. You're gonna have to do multiple playthroughs to get everything, and it can be a little bit weird to talk about in a boss ranking because we're gonna be jumping out of order. Number 5, Ling Ling, the Flower and Corpse Princess. And now for a fight with Ling Ling. This is the one boss fight where our heroes are 100% without any room for doubt in the wrong with their actions. Ling Ling is straight up wanting to be your friend despite her incredible amount of shyness, and honestly, if she was the first of the archdemons we encountered, there's a decent chance the plot could have been resolved on the first playthrough of the game. But anyways, the battle's still amazing. All of her attacks have this slightly off but very fun timing to deal with. Her design is very distinct, being reminiscent of the Chinese Zhangxia, and instead of claws or sword stripes, she's beating you over the head with her flowers and her coffin, which is very memorable and kind of ridiculous. Thankfully, she is fairly passive in Phase 1, as the boss of Chapter 2, she's not going to be that difficult, but despite having a coffin as a primary weapon, she has a surprisingly good amount of combo variety. Phase 2, she enters a more classic bullet hell state where the music both increases in its intensity and melancholic nature, plus I have to give it to her voice actress. She sounds like she's really at the end of her rope here. Phase 3 is my favorite of the bunch. It has her start utilizing new attacks from her coffin, being able to set delayed explosions, unleash a giant flower grab, and overall this phase is an enhanced version of her first phase, but with her passivity gone and the moveset increase in intensity. I think it's a ton of fun, and honestly even her passive nature in phase 1 fits, since she doesn't want to fight you, and this is the one battle in the game where we are very clearly the ones in the wrong with no ifs, ands, or buts to be thrown in. The fourth and final phase is her burn phase, but it justifies the Hualing fight from earlier in the chapter because it was practice for this do or die bullet hell segment, with her unleashing tons of different bullet patterns while also incorporating attacks that need to be parried as they're way too fast to dodge. Though thankfully parrying in this game is the way you heal. It takes what would be a potentially overwhelming final phase and makes it a final test after everything against Hualing and the flowerhead enemies that made you practice throughout chapter 2. While I enjoyed Chapter 1, I'd say this fight is more or less where the game really hooked me, even if the narrative made me facepalm a bit because of how comedically evil Hime was acting here compared to literally every other point in the game, but hey, whatever. And if you beat her, you're probably committed to beating the entire game. Number 4, Agasa Mamiya. You know, I think that might actually be backwards because I'm pretty sure Japan it's supposed to be family name first, but I don't know, dude. My foreign languages I took in school were Spanish and a little bit of Korean. I didn't take Japanese. Anyways, the game sets just how different everything is going to be on your second run through when you go to find Agasa and she's no longer there. In fact, we don't meet Agasa again until after befriending Ling Ling, Nozomi, and the twins, until we finally run into her near the end of our journey at the outskirts of her village where her human life came to an end. Her first phase doesn't include any new moves from her original, but she has a vastly increased aggression level and can chain her unblockable bullets into the end of more combos, keeping you on the move more. It's very easy by this point in the game, but it works well as a look how far we've come moment, and sure, it might be easy, but hey, a well-made first boss that's scaled up for the end game with stuff that's designed to keep it up in terms of pacing, it's still going to be a well-made first boss fight. I still enjoy it. And now Phase 2 has you fight her giant skeleton form, which has also seen an increase in aggression, but now instead of just standing there like a punching bag for a lot of the fight, it's going all out on the offense, which I think is a massive change for the better. We've had cinematic fights and giant damage sponges, and I don't think that really cut it in the endgame. So now, with Agasa puppeting the giant skeleton, she's not hesitating to break out her strongest attacks, including increased barrages of rock bullets and unblockable stalagmites, keeping you constantly on the move. It's an absolute blast, and it's honestly a fun fight. It can put up a bit of a challenge, but it's more so here to give a player a nice ego boost, after the last boss likely caved their face in time and time again for a while, and right before the next boss proceeds to do much of the same, caving up your face in. Number 3, Admini the Divine Punisher. And now for the game's true final boss fight. I knew we were going to have to fight An because I've played these games before, and between Eri and Magalore, I have trust issues, shall we say. However, I was not expecting it to be an Elfalin situation, but, I mean, whatever. We know I'm biased as hell towards final bosses and so often put them at number 1 on my list, but not this time around. Make no mistake, it's an excellent final boss fight, but between the two phases, Phase 1 has a really annoying attack that hurts the fight enough to keep it out of Stellar Tier, and one other nitpick thrown in as well. Still an excellent final boss fight, though, and let's talk about the good stuff. She has some graceful sword combos that can alternate between and be chained together in different ways. And the rule of red means block and yellow means dodge is properly functioning again, so she's doing better than Educator. She has this new flying wall swipes, and her 2 gears can be deflected, which can turn into 2 turrets, which can also be deflected. It's a neat fight. But what I really don't care for is the attack where she rains down swords and sends out unblockable shockwaves. It's the one attack where it feels like it's just kind of wasting a ton of time because there isn't really a good chance to capitalize against it, and there are a few points where her AI just decides to randomly disassociate for a second as she just stands there. I get that the idea is to give the player a chance to unleash one of their big combos against the boss, but at the same time, it can look super silly of her just pausing. The big openings are fine, I just think it would have been better if maybe they gave her longer recovery animation or something like that, or something else instead of just her standing there. I don't know. It's the thing that's holding this fight back from being in the Stellar Tier. Instead, the boss is like a 9.5 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. But of course, what kind of action RPG final boss would only have a single health bar? Quite a few of them actually, but not in this case, as once she has her health reduced to 0, she goes for her massive combo that's going to act as a bit of a parry and dodge check, and then she uses some comedically oversized katanas before Hime enters Fireheart mode permanently and the final phase begins. She is ridiculously fast, and this fight is moving at a breakneck pace, with her taking moves from basically all of the major bosses such as Agas's grab, Nozomi's rip slashes, Mamiya's greatsword slashes, the lightspeed dashes of the twins, and the trap bullets from Ling Ling, to say nothing about her other attacks and just the absurd pace this fight moves at. Honestly, I was actually ready to complain about this phase being far too demanding to try and beat without using a revive, especially when your only way to heal normally is by parrying. I completely forgot the very important mechanic that spirit shots will allow you to drain health from enemies and bosses when you're in Fireheart mode, and since it's permanent during this fight, that means never stop firing. The fight is still far from free, but it's much more manageable with this in mind, albeit it's still probably in the top 2 hardest fights in the game. This battle is intense, and it's probably the fastest opponent in the game, but I have to take a moment to give my grievance with the music. It's not bad, but it sounds like some sort of instrumental version of an anime opening. Because it kind of is, and that's because when she loses health, and the better your rank does, the more the song's vocals start to kick in, until going full blast when she's at half health, and I gotta admit, it is pretty weep-tastic, and the fight is really fun. It's an excellent final challenge that provides a strong conclusion to the story of the game, and it does get pretty meta once you get to the end, as the game gives you a false choice of either fulfilling Anne's wish to end her life so she can be free of Null's control, or try to find a way to keep her alive. This ultimately is a choice you don't get to make because Hime will talk directly to you, the player, and tell you that she's grateful for all your help, but she fully intends to fulfill Anne's wish. I'm not going to pretend that this game has the most gripping narrative in the world, but it's a solid ending that hits a lot of the emotional beats and ends the game on a very strong note. Number 2, Yumiko and Kumiko, Round 2. We go from the highest stakes battle in the game to, quite honestly, the lowest stakes battle in the game. On the second run through the game, Yumiko and Kumiko are already on your side at this point. They're just fighting you because they're kind of battle hobos, and I gotta say, I approve. The fight is excellent, with phase 1 of the fight essentially being an enhanced version of their original battle, now with them going all in on synchronized attacks, and if you love duo bosses with synchronized attacks, this fight will hit you like crack hit low-income neighborhoods in the 80s, with their large emphasis on deflecting attacks, but also a fair number of dodge-focused attacks thrown in to keep you on your toes. It can be tricky, but it's a lot of fun, and there's never a point where it feels cheap, and there's never a point where you wonder, how the hell did that hit me? Because there's no off-screen nonsense, because once again, Kumiko is nice enough to not attack you when she's off-screen. And all of that's not to mention the fact that I think their tennis combo that leads into this one where they take you into like a sumo arena sort of looking place is probably my favorite attack string to deflect in the entire game. It's just a lot of fun and it looks really cool. Then they unlock their new phase where they pull a Dragon Ball Z fusion dance and whoa, big lady. They fuse together to become Mimiko, the Great Watchdog, and honestly, this might be the most relentless boss in the game, with her dual-wielding kanabos that she's more than happy to bludgeon you over the head with. Her attacks are so strong that some of her melee attacks just cannot be parried, and thankfully, parryable and non-parryable attacks still both have distinct flashes and animations, but when they're thrown at you like a rhythm game while she's channeling her inner Fujin and Raijin, it can be intimidating and overwhelming. This was the boss that made me wish you could rematch bosses to better learn them, only to beat the game a few hours later and see that that very feature actually gets unlocked, which is pretty cool. At the very least, there is some form of boss rematch you can do. There are a few glitches I encountered in this fight, but thankfully they were just minor visual hiccups like the perpetual motion machines being stuck in the ground, despite also being in her hand, though that's just a silly little visual thing. It doesn't actually affect the fight, and they're not damages boxes, so it doesn't detract from the battle at all for me. It's just a silly, oh, that probably's gotta get patched moment. She then has one last phase where it goes to classic bullet hell for the last time of the game, with a more demanding set of attacks to keep you on your toes. Or they would be if she didn't love to throw in a bunch of parryable attacks in between her onslaught to keep you healed up. Since your spirit shots will never miss here, all you really have to do is focus on dodging, which is probably good because this is some of the most dangerous bullet patterns in the game. Overall, it's an excellent fight to act as a gatekeeper to the endgame, and it's fantastic. It's honestly one of the best gank bosses in any game, and it has a really good follow-up phase as well. Number 1, Miyuki Mamiya. Once again, I'm pretty sure I got that backwards, but whatever. The rematch with Mamiya is a must-play if you are a fan of deflection-focused games like Lies of P or Sekiro or Wolong or whatever. Granted, there's still plenty of attacks that you need to dodge, but this battle is honestly a work of art. Phase 1 of the fight is her immediately tossing away her umbrella to start throwing everything at you, and the music reflects it as well while being... well, it is the same boss theme from her first battle, but now it takes no time getting into the second movement, and it sounds really good while also hitting the somber mood of the fight. But going beyond that, this fight just hits the perfect flow state for me, where you're constantly on the move and there's not really any downtime where she just stops. She may take a second to catch her breath or size you up, but for the most part she's either attacking or setting up for an attack, and she's going to show her mastery over ice with her clones, after images, and being able to fly around on her own icicles that she creates. She has a fair number of combos and mix-ups, and everything she does just feels rhythmic. The entire fight just feels good, and her second phase, when she's around 60% HP, doesn't technically add any new moves, but now she's making her once very rare moves far more common, as she's chaining her different moves together in new ways that she hasn't before, and given how difficult the fight is, I'm okay with there not being any new surprise gotcha attacks thrown in. It's just now expecting you to have mastered the game's combat before you can take on the final bosses, and I think it does an excellent job. This is far and away the hardest fight in the game, but it's not one that I ever got annoyed or irritated with. It was one where every time I died, I had a smile on my face as I was ready to give it another go, and in this style of game in particular, a more deflection-focused action RPG, the only other game that hit this sort of fun level for me was Owl Father from Sekiro. Of course, at the end of her health bar, she has one final parry test, which is a bit interesting as it starts out the same as before in our first fight, but I always see her stop short the first time, making you redo the combo where she now ups the intensity of everything. I wonder if this was intended to be a perfect parry of everything, but at the same time maybe the devs realized that perfect parrying 7 hits in a row with all her other attacks thrown in would have been too demanding, but hey, it's still an intense and very awesome pinch phase to close out the fight. And just as the battle seems like it's going to end the same way as before, Agasa manages to step in to stop the fight, which also leads to the two sisters reuniting. And it's a strong moment in the story, and after a bunch of depression, it's nice that the game allows for a happy ending or two. AVGN said it best, life is kinda cool sometimes. And honestly, this isn't just one of the best bosses, and the scene where she sees her husband for the last time before allowing herself to forgive herself is a really good moment in the story. I've fought in a while, this isn't just the best boss in the game, but she might be a top 30 all-time boss fight for me, she's that good. One of these days, I really should do a best bosses countdown, but I don't think I could really stop at 10 or 20. I need to do something ridiculous like a top 100. I don't know, maybe I'll do that someday. We'll see. And that's gonna do it for this video. This game was honestly a treat to play, and it was a nice palate cleanser after playing through entirely too many roguelikes for my own good. I cannot recommend this game enough. It has a demo that you should at least try, but considering the game isn't even close to full price, it is a more than worthwhile package. I'm not 100% sure if it's a game of the year for me, but it's definitely my favorite indie game to come out this year. Monster Hunter Stories 3 though is still making a strong argument, but damn if this isn't up there. And honestly, 2026 is just a stacked year for games in general. It's great. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. If you'd like to see more content of varying quality, consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, take care everyone.